Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, please click on like and subscribe. If you've been here before, welcome back. Today we're going to be making this little 6-inch tall, 12-inch wide cherry step stool. This is good for your bedside, bathroom, kitchen, whatever you need. So I've got my plans here, not much to it. The legs, as you can see, I got a 5-degree angle cut back on the legs. You do not have to do this if you don't want to. If you don't have the tools to do it, you can do straight legs on it. I've just got the tools to do it, so I'm going to put a 5-degree angle on it. Now I want to make this 12-inch wide. My board is only 9 inches, so by the time I get it thinned down, it's going to be 8 inches wide. So I'm going to cut this in 2 pieces, and then I'm going to cut the edges off of it and join them together. Now I'm cutting these at like 13 inches. I'm leaving enough room so when I run it through my planer over there, I don't chip out the end of it and mess up my project. So I'm always making these a little bit wider at the beginning or a little bit longer than I need to, depending on your machinery or what you're doing or your finish. If you went to the box store and you've got pre-finished lumber, you don't need to do this step at all. You can cut it to 12 inches by 6 inches, whatever you need, and be done with it. Again, I'm just leaving room for the planer in case I get a chip out or a blowout at the end or something. I've got room to chip it off. Now my legs are going to be 5 1/4 inches long, somewhere right in that area. So I'm going to cut off 6 inches of board for that. I can't get 6 inches through my planer. I could, but it's very dangerous. Probably blow out the other side. So I'm going to make enough room to do 3 of these. Now, since I'm 8 inches wide, I can technically get 2 3s and 1 2 out of each one. So I'm going to cut off 3 sections of them. And you'll see later on, I wasn't thinking, but my board is 9 inches wide. So when I cut my 6 inches off my side pieces, I actually get my other 2-inch pieces off of my seat. But again, we'll address that later on when that happens. The main part is you end up with all the pieces on the cut list. And most of the time I grab my scrap wood box to get the legs out of it, but I don't have much cherry scrap wood, so I'm starting with a new piece here. So I've set my planer to 3/4 of an inch. I'm probably going to end up with closer to 1 inch on these boards. These boards are like 15/16. I don't want to take off as much, or I want to take off as little as I need to on them since it's cherry. And since we're making legs out of it, I want to keep it, a little more sturdy if possible. I can take these down to 3/4, which I have in the past, made these, and there's no issues holding 200 pounds. But if you can make them a little bulkier, make it a little bulkier, and then you can just change the length of your legs to match your top. So it only took me 2 or 3 times to go down through here, and I've actually got these planed off pretty good, and I'm going to end up with 7/8 of an inch out of my wood. So I'm just going to plane everything down to 7/8 of an inch. I'm now going to set my saw, and I'm just going to cut off the edges of these. So I've got nice smooth edges on these, so I can cut on the other side and get smooth cuts out of it. So again, I'm just ripping the edge of this off to get rid of the fuzzy stuff or any unsmooth edges. These are pretty straight on the outside edge because these are pre-finished boards. They're cabinet grade wood, so they're pretty close to being straight anyhow. If you got something really rough, sometimes I do this twice. I'll cut the one side, flip it over, cut the other side, and then use whichever side's straighter. They should fit down the fence line. You can run them through a joiner if you want to, or you can just keep flipping it back and forth doing really small cuts until you get it nice and straight. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to take the other side now. I'm going to take my edge that I just cut off, put it against my fence, flip these over, and just cut the other side off so they're all nice and smooth. So now I'm smooth on both sides. I can pick whichever one's the straightest and then make my cuts. So I'm going to join these 2 pieces together. These are going to be my top. So I want this to be 12 inches wide. So I'm going to go 6 inches wide on the cut. And again, this is where I said earlier I ended up with 2 extra cuts for my legs over here, so I didn't need to make the board as long as I did, but I'll be making more of these in the future, so I'll just put them in the pile. So when I make the next ones, I've got them ready to go. So I'm setting my fence to 6 inches now, and I'm going to run both these through at 6 inches. If you need to join them, make sure you leave a little bit extra, do 6 1/8 on each one, and you can always chop it off. You can't add back to it very easily. So I'm going to run these through, and they're just a hair over 6 inches. And I'm going to run these across my joiner one time just to get the rough edge off of them, just so they join up nice and smooth. Now these are my 2 pieces that were left over off of my top piece there. Again, wasn't thinking about that when I was making the cuts. But I got at least 2 inches out of each one of these, so I'm going to go ahead and set my fence to 2 inches. I'm going to cut these 2, and each one of these will make 2 pieces. Since they're 12 inches long, I only need 5 1/8 inch now for my length. I can cut 2 of these pieces and have 2 of my sides of my legs done, if that makes any sense. I'll have 4 pieces that are 5 1/4 inches long or 5 1/8 inches long, 2 inches wide. My next board here is where I need my 3-inch cut. Again, I need 4 pieces that are 5 1/8 inches long and 3 inches wide. So this is the board I cut longer in the first place. I didn't have to cut as long, so I'm just going to take it over to the chop saw and I'm going to chop it down a little bit. So again, I made this 12 inches long. I'm setting my saw to 3 inches now. I'm going to cut my boards. I only need 2 of these cut since they're 12 inches long. And then we're going to cut them down to where they're the same length. And of course my unfinished edge is on the outside. So there's numerous ways of doing this. I'm basically going to cut my legs to length now. You can use a miter saw and put a stop on there. You can measure each piece out and cut it. You can put each piece back to back with each other and cut them. This is just my preferred method. It takes a little bit longer to do, but I end up with pretty much perfect boards every time I do this. So I'm just taping my legs together here. Now again, these are going to be 4 pieces, and they are the 2-inch by 5 1/8 when I get done, and the 3-inch by 5 1/8. So by taping these together, I can get nice clean cuts on the ends. I'm taping them far enough apart that I can cut in the middle and cut the ends off, and then I end up with nice clean cuts, and they're all exactly the same. And that way I don't end up with lopsided legs, or legs I have to sand down later, try to correct wobbles in. Again, this can be accomplished with a stop. It can be accomplished with a sled, whatever you want. As you can see here, I'm cutting all 4 legs at the same exact time. Make sure you don't raise that blade up before it stops spinning, because you will eject pieces out the back and make little bullets out of them. Now, since I am doing multiple cuts here, I did set up a stop. As you can see, I got a 4x4 in there. When you do this, be very careful. Know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do this, because when you do this, you create a bind right there. Make sure your blade stops spinning 100% completely, because see how I've raised that up? If your blade's spinning, that's going to eject out of there. And when you get done, you should have 4 equal pieces exactly the same. If they need to be trimmed up a little bit, trim them up now. It's easier to put them back on the saw, do a straight cut down through there, and make sure they're all equal. Now over to the joiner, I want to join these 2 pieces for the top. And if you don't have a joiner, you can do this with your table saw. There's a couple methods online you can find. The joiner just makes life a lot easier for stuff like this. But you can do this with the table saw. If you run both pieces through the table saw, flip one down, flip one up, you'll end up with the same cut even if your saw's off like a degree. It's kind of the same thing with your planer. My planer is set to 90 degrees, but if your planer was off a little bit, you can actually run one piece through that way, turn the other one around the opposite way, and let's say you're off 3 degrees. It's not going to matter, because you're going to do a 3-degree opposite cut on both sides, and when you put them together, they're going to fit perfectly. Now this is another step you don't have to do if you don't want to, but I'm going to do it just to ensure my piece stays together. It's going to be supported on all 4 sides, but since it's going to be stepped on, I don't want it to end up cracking down the middle eventually and end up with a gap or a little pinch in there. Someone might pinch a foot or something like that. So I'm taking my piece that I've got left over here, and I'm just throwing a couple test pockets. Now, if you're good with pocket screws, you don't have to do this. I do it just about every time just to make sure I've got the proper depth. The tool itself has like 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, depending on what it is. But sometimes I like to adjust that and make it the perfect depth for me. So 2 or 3 drill holes is easier for me on a piece of scrap wood than to taking my finished piece, popping a hole in it, realizing I just blew out the other side, or I'm too deep, too shallow. So I make any changes I need and fix it now before tearing something up later and trying to fix the project. And again, I don't do this for every single thing I do. I'm doing this for the video just so you can see what you're going to be doing, just in case you're fairly new at this. I'm trying an 1.5-inch screw here, and see how far through that comes? That comes to the point where it's almost going to pop out the other side. When that pops out the other side or pushes on the other side, you can cause a break or a bulge in your wood. So I'm going to drop my screws down to 1.25 inches instead of 1.5 inches. And for the wood gurus out there, just FYI, I know those aren't pocket screws, but they work. They're decking screws. They're good for indoor, outdoor, and they work just fine. You can use pocket screws if it makes you feel better, or if you like pocket screws better. Pocket screws sometimes go into the wood a little bit better. So I'm just marking my board now where I want the pocket screws to go in at. I want to cut a small 3-inch circle or an oval into the stool so you can grab a hold of it from the top. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. So I'm going to put the pocket screw holes to the left and to the right of the board, leaving the center open so I can cut my hole out of it. Once I get my lines on there, I'm going to clamp it in place and pop my screw holes in it. So I've just got a couple 4x4s here just to raise it up off the bench a little bit. That way I can get a clamp under or over it if I need to. And I'm just flipping these around to find out where they fit the best at. And I've got the best seam from. Once I get that done, I'm going to flip one up on its end and I'm going to run a bead of glue across it. Or I'm going to forget to pull the cap open all the way and pick the dry glue off the end of it. And then I'm going to run a bead across of it. But I'm going to edit that part out so you can't see it. Anyhow, there's the glue on it. A few clamps in place. Now these clamps are not tight. They're just holding the wood together. I'm going to put a couple clamps on the end just to keep my seams from popping apart. And if your piece is wider than this, you can run a board across the middle of them and clamp the middle of it too, but these are pretty well seamed. And I did run my finger down the bottom of it, make sure that it was seamed good on the other side. Once I've got that in place, I'm going to clamp it a little bit tighter, then I'm going to run my pocket screws in, or my wood screws into there, depending on which one you're using again. I'm going to go through, clean up the excess glue like normal. Now this is kind of the tricky part. This is where I'm going to put the 5-degree angles on the legs. Now you can do this many ways. Again, you can set up a table saw with a small jig in it. You can do your miter saw if you don't cherish your fingers a lot, or if you're really good with it, or you want to use some clamps. This is the best way I've found to do it. I'm going to set my miter to 5 degrees here. I'm going to tighten it down, and what I'm doing is I've set my fence to where it clears the blade, but not by much. But I'm not going to hit the blade with my fence. So I'm going to slide this block up against here. I'm going to slide it backwards, and I'm just going to tilt it in to where it sits flush. So basically, by doing that, that gives me my 5-degree angle in there. And it'll take you 3 or 4 times if you haven't done this before, but you'll get the feel of it. And when you slide your saw across here, you'll see that it just barely cuts the edge. If not, loosen your clamp up, slide it back over a little bit, and try it again. Make sure you let your saw come to a complete stop before you clear out the small pieces. And then this should work for all of your leg pieces. So all 8 pieces will work like this. You don't have to worry right now about how they're facing because we're still going to glue them together. We can slide them left, right, forward, backwards, flip them inside, outside. And again, another reason for the tape to stay on there, as you can see, the tape is still on there. I did not take the tape off. And that just keeps the legs together. They're still nice and straight. They're still even. It makes it easier to make this cut. I'm going to go ahead and take my tape off my legs now. As you can see, I made me a nice flat surface over here on my old dirty work table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these legs up as if they were on the stool already. Since we've got a 2-inch side and a 3-inch side, when we do it the opposite way, or when we flip it around, both sides will technically be 3 inches. So I'm going to set these up the way I want them. I want my flat sides facing the front, or my wider sides facing the front, and my smaller sides facing the side. Now I'm going to have a couple screw holes in the end of this, which I'm going to fill in with plugs. So do this whichever way you want. If you prefer your split edge on the front or split edge on the side, entirely up to you. Again, if you want to get even more fancy, you could 45 those and make a nice tight 45. This just gives me more room to do it the way I want to do it. So I'm going to glue these together one at a time just to keep from confusing myself. But if you feel better about gluing them all at one time, go ahead. Just make sure you've got to remember that your thinner side goes to the bottom, and you've got to make sure you keep your faces the way you want them. So to me, it's easier just to go around the circle and do them this way. I'm going to put the glue on here fairly liberal. I don't want it squishing all over the place, but I do want enough to stick. And I'm just going to put these together, and I'm not going to clamp them yet. I'm just going to let the glue set up for a few seconds. And while that's happening, I went over to the floor, picked up my couple pieces of scrap that came off. These are my 5-degree cuts. Because what happens when you put a clamp on here, if it's 5 degrees back, you're probably going to slide the board up or down a little bit. So if you take that little wedge and put it back in there, when you put your clamp on there, it'll keep the board from sliding up and down and give you a nice even bind. Now just using my flat surface here, I'm pushing down, make sure my top's even and my feet are even. The feet are more important than the top. Just because you can sand them off, or you can put them through the table saw or chop saw later if you need to make some adjustments, because not everything turns out perfect. Most of the videos that are shown online, everything is absolutely perfect, but we all know in real life sometimes things get off a little bit. So if that happens, we're here to correct them, and we're not perfect. As usual, use a wet towel and wipe all this down as best as you can, especially being cherry. Since I'm going to oil this, the glue stains will show up horrendously, especially, or if you're going to shellac it or something like that. So now that the legs are drying, I'm going to go back over to my top piece here. I took the clamps off of it. It's been probably 4, maybe 6 hours. I do have the pocket screws in there, so I'm not worried about it coming apart. The glue's set up enough that it's not going to move anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this. I'm not going to be banging it around anywhere, but I'm just going to sand the glue line down. That way I can go ahead and run it through my table saw, get it cut to the 12 by 12 pattern that I wanted. And I want to do that before, I want to sand this before I do that. That way if there's any glue on there, it doesn't create a small 2-degree angle or 3-degree angle, 1-degree angle, whatever, on the table saw. And when I go to put it in here, I noticed my end was off a little bit. And again, this is why I leave a little bit extra on these before I finish them. I'm going to take it over to my chop saw and I'm going to cut this off so I've got a nice clean end on one side. Now the way I put my screws in there, I left enough room for a 1/2 inch to come off of each side, so that's perfect. Now I got my clean edge over here. I'm still going to measure it. Again, I want to take off the same amount on both sides. If I didn't have the pocket screws in here, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just cut it down to where it needs to be. But since I've got the pocket screws in there and I'm doing a hole in the middle, I still need to make sure I remember to leave enough space to put the hole in the middle. That way my CNC doesn't hit the screws. And again, if you don't have a CNC machine, when we get to that part, just take a hole saw, drill a hole in it, take your jigsaw, and you can round out your oval with a jigsaw if you want to. Or you can leave that step completely off. Speaking of which, it's time to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the center here, which is 6 inches, and the center should be 6 inches, as you can see right there. So I've got my center done right, so I have 12 by 12 square. I'm going to leave enough room to make a 3-inch oval in the middle. I'm just double checking, make sure I'm not going to hit my screws. If I wanted to do a 4-inch here, I could, but 3 inches is usually enough to get your hand in to pick up the seat. Again, if you don't have a CNC machine, drill your hole in the middle, use a hole saw, cut you a 1.5 inch hole, and then use a jigsaw to finish rounding it off with. And I will not lie, this makes life a whole lot easier to do this, but also there was a learning curve to this. It's not the first time I threw a piece of wood on there and just cut a perfect hole in the middle of it. There have been many pieces of firewood made out of this machine also. And while it's up here and I'm looking at it, I'm going to go ahead and put my plugs in here. Again, you don't have to plug this since it's going to be on the bottom side. I'm going to plug it anyhow. I'm just using regular old Craig plugs. Even though I'm using cherry, again, it's going to be the bottom side. You're never going to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in. I'm going to cut up my little stop tabs here. Now, if you don't use the stop tabs on your CNC machine, if you've never used one before, what will happen is that will go all the way through the bottom. The piece will bind up and it'll break or shoot out of there. The other thing you can do is tape it to the board and then CA glue it down so it doesn't fly out of there. And here we are back to sanding. Everybody loves sanding. I sand several times during my projects. It's easier for me to just keep the project smooth or semi-smooth as I'm going before I do the finish coat. Again, another option, since this is going to be a footstool or someone's going to step on it, I'm going to round over the corners a little bit. You can do this again with a jigsaw, bandsaw, your router, whatever you want to do. And again, I'm just going to roll these around nice and slow. That way I don't blow the ends out of them. It's a pretty aggressive bit I've got on there for cherry, but that's what I have at the time. My small bits burn up, so I'm using a 1/2 inch bit. Once I get that done, I'm going to put a round over in, and I'm going to round this over. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch round over since my wood is almost 1 inch thick. Sometimes I do a smaller one, but since the wood's so thick, I think a 1/4 inch will look good on this. And I'm just rounding over the inside edges of my circle first. I'll flip it over, do the other side, and then do around the outside edges of it. Another step completely up to you. You can chamfer the edge, you can put a fancy edge on there, you can leave the edge flat. And I've been using a 120 grit most of the time. You can use an 80 if you want to. 120 takes a little bit longer, but it doesn't leave as much damage to the wood. So it's easier to sand it the first time. Once you get it sanded to 120, from there on out, the 120 is pretty easy to keep things cleaned up. Since I'm getting ready to do the finish of it, it's almost done, everything's glued together. I'm going around with a 120 real good this time, making sure I hit my edges, my corners, I round everything in. If your router left a rough edge on it or something, make sure you hit that. Make sure you get down your groove, and make sure all your flat lines or your joining lines are seamed together. You don't want to take the sander and dig it in there. But if it's on the bottom side, you can dig in a little bit just to make the line smoother. Top side, you really want to keep your sander flat and sand the entire surface, not just a crack. I know it's a pain in the butt. Most people don't want to do it, and you can get away with it. It just keep your sander flat, sand the entire project. So getting back to the legs, these have been sitting for about 3 hours, so I'm going to take the clamps off of them. They should stay in place while you're doing this. I'm just going to rearrange my clamp and put it across the middle. That way I can put 2 screws in here, one at the top, one at the bottom. Again, that's completely optional. We're going to screw this from the top also. So if you trust the glue, or if you're, making this for a smaller person, you don't need to do this, but I always try to make them to where they hold at least 200, 300 pounds. So a couple screws aren't going to hurt anything. I'm measuring this a 1/2 inch in, and I'm going to measure it 1 inch up. And that's where I'm going to pre-drill my holes. I'm going to use a countersink bit, countersink it in there, and then we're going to run a couple 1.25 inch screws into it. Now once I get my screws in, I've got all my pieces done, I'm going to go over to the CNC machine. I'm going to make some small plugs. Again, if you don't have a CNC machine, if you use a countersink bit, if you buy a 3/8 countersink bit, you can go to your box store and buy 3/8 inch dowel rods, or you can get online if you're going to do cherry, maple, walnut, anything special. And you can buy dowel rods that are the same size as your countersink holes. Me, fortunately, I just get to make my own, and then I can adjust them to whatever I need or whatever wood I'm working with. And while those are cutting out, I'm just going back to sanding here. Again, this is not a final sand. I'm just going to hit the rough spots, get it closer to where it needs to be. I'll set my legs back up, and this is kind of where you get a look and see what your project's going to look like. And once my plugs are done cutting, I'm going to put a little bit of glue in here. I'm going to pound these in. Now these are super tight. I made them a little bit too tight, but either way, I got them in there. I'm going to wait till the glue dries just a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and cut those off. I'm going to round the edges over the same as I rounded my top step over. You need to make sure you have the plugs in here first, because if you're rounding this over, as you're going down through there, your bit can fall into the screw hole and end up with a wobbly piece on there, so you don't want that to happen. So you just want to be careful, round these all over. Again, you can chamfer them, whatever you want to do. You can leave them square. Entirely up to you. I prefer to just round them over a little bit. I'm getting ready to put the legs on, so what I'm doing now is making sure I have them all set the way I want. Again, remember, whichever your face is going to be, I want my screw covers to be on the outside edges. So make sure when you're putting these up, you get the small end down and your screw holes facing the way you want them. Same as when I glued them together, I'm just going to put these on the board, let them set, and that way I can put them in place as I go around the board. Don't want to get anything upside down or backwards. Now this is not the final sand, but it is almost the final sand, so make sure you get these as close as possible where you want them at. And then at the end, all you have to do is sand a little bit if you get some glue somewhere. Now I'm going to put my corners on. I want my corners to be even, obviously. The best way for me to do this is to take a straight edge like this and put it down both sides. Now these are 3/4 inch strips. You can do 1/2 inch strips, 1/4 inch strips, whatever you want to do. And I'm just going to clamp these in the middle to hold them in place. They're not like nailed in place, or they're not firm. They're just there for kind of a guide reference. So get them as tight as you can with your clamps, and that way when you slide your corner pieces in, they're all the same all the way around the board. So I'm going to go ahead and glue all these at one time. I'm not going to put them down at once, but I'm going to put the glue on there. I'm going to spread it out. I'm going to let the glue get a little tacky. That way I'm not sliding around in my corners when I go to clamp them down. If it's too slippery, basically it slides all over the place while you're trying to clamp it, and you got to keep moving your clamps. If you give it a few minutes to tack up, when you put them in the corners, they'll set a little bit better and make it a little easier for you to place them. So we're at that point now. I'm going to take the corner, slide it in place, and then once I get it to where I want it at, I'm just going to put a clamp on both sides to keep it from moving around. Now the clamps I want to put snug at first, but not tight. I'm not going to super clamp them because, again, we're going to slide a little bit, push in, push out a little bit. So we're just going to tighten it up enough to where it doesn't move. Put the other clamp on, slide it back in the corner where it fits good, and then tighten our clamps down. I want to unclamp the one side. Once I get that done, spin it around, put the corner in, unclamp that side, spin it around, put the corner in, and basically just walk my way around until I'm done with all 4 corners. And in case you didn't guess it, yes, I'm going to clean up all the glue that squished out from the clamps. You can also adjust your clamps a little bit if you need to. Sometimes a piece not sitting exactly perfect, or it might have shifted a little bit on you. So you can recheck your measurements if you wanted to, and check your clamps before everything's dry. And I'm going to let this set overnight. And here we are the next morning. I'm going to take all my clamps off. I'm going to measure from the inside. I should be the same measurement no matter what I'm doing, depending on what size wood you're using. So I'm at 1.25 inches to hit the middle of my wood if I drill down through here. So what I'm doing now is just marking my top part of my stool to 1.25 inches, and then I'm going to mark it 2.25 inches up. That's where I want to put my screw at. You can put your screws wherever you want to, and again, you don't have to screw this at all. It would probably hold up just fine the way it is. Again, I want this to hold 300 or more pounds, and I'm putting the screws in it. I'll give them back to the countersink. I'll put a link to this on the description below. These are pretty good for softer hardwoods, I should say. Definitely good for softwoods. I was kind of surprised when I first started using them. I was expecting them to not work at all. I did try these on an oak project. They will snap in oak. But for maple, walnut, and especially softwoods, these actually make really good counter sink bits. And it's got a nice little stop at the end, so you can set it to how deep you want it, and you don't have to worry about each time double checking. It hits the plastic and it spins just fine. Once I get all these drilled in, I'm going back to the 1.25 inch screws, and we're going to just run some 1.25 inch screws down through here. And then back to the plugs again. We're going to put a little bit of glue on the holes and drive the plugs in. Now give that about 20 or 30 minutes to dry, and then you should be able to cut them then. And this again is the most dangerous tool in my shop, as you will see here in a second. It takes one little second, even though I got a plug on the other side, that you bump your finger and you will bleed. I even went out of my way to make sure I didn't bump my finger. And guess what I did? I bumped my finger. So now you see I've got a homemade Band-Aid on there to keep me from dripping blood on the cherry. And a couple last times sanding here, I'm just knocking down the peg holes, making sure they're nice and smooth all the way around. I'm going to go over the edges one more time. This is with a 120. And then once I get everything where I want it, I'm going to flip my sander over to a 220 grit. And we're going to go over everything one more time with a 220. That way it has a really nice smooth finish to it. And don't forget to get down your little hole, since that's more than likely going to get touched more than anything, because that's where people are going to reach in. Make sure you've got it nice and smooth down through there. And then the last thing we're going to do is put on a finish. Pick your favorite finish. If you want to shellac it, you can. You can use this feed and wax, which I enjoy. It smells good, soaks in good, and gives the surface a nice clean finish look, and it doesn't leave a greasy film or anything when it's done. It's just mineral oil and beeswax. So I'm going to push this in really good. I'm going to work it in and make sure you get down the hole, get down the groove, and cover everything real nice. I'm going to show you why I like doing the hand oils too here in just a second. You'll see a spot of glue on the edge here. Now if you're going to shellac that or spray that with something, as soon as you spray it, that glue is going to stand out like a sore thumb. And even after all the sanding I did, I still missed that little bit of glue. So basically I'm going to go back and address that here in a second. We're going to sand that piece out and we're going to re-oil it. Now try not to hit the feet on these. Also, you'll notice the bottom of them still have a little bit of oil on them, but I try not to do that because if you're going to put them on a hard surface, it's going to slide everywhere. But the oil takes a couple days for it to settle in real good. And usually before I ship these out to a customer, I'll take them back out in the shop and I will sand the feet down really good, and I will do any type of small blemish fixing or anything that needs to be done, so they get touched up one more time before they get shipped out. And that's about all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please click on like, subscribe, take a moment, drop a comment down below, let me know what you think about the video.